more and more businesses open up, as demand increases and production has to increase, a peculiar problem is emerging, that of shortage of labor, skilled and unskilled, of staff in various sectors, whether it's the textile industry, whether it's the hospitality industry, or whether it's real estate. And there are a number of reasons for this, including many people who moved away back to their hometowns in the first wave of the pandemic, simply not wanting to return. My colleagues Prakash and Khushbu have these reports.
With ease off in COVID cases and restrictions, there's high hope that economy is now reviving. However, in few of the sectors, there's a labor shortage that is being witnessed. For example, in the real estate industry, few of the developers that we talked to said that they are facing the high demand for skilled labor, but the supply for this kind of work is not actually there. For example, if they need 100 people to work on a project, they're only getting 25 people for all those skilled. For example, they are high in demand for plumbers, fitters and construction workers, but they're not getting that kind of a workforce right now. And this is one of the reasons which is impacting the delays in projects. Apart from this, we talked to some of the people in SMEs and MSMEs. The workforce there has returned. However, the companies are not ready right now to spend on upskilling of their workforce or upgrading their machinery right now, because they are working on already tight working capital, because input costs have gone up, the commodity prices have gone up, which has impacted their margins. The textile industry in Surat that we talked to said that their workers have come back, but again, their constraints are same side on the supply and on the production costs. But the hospitality business that we have seen was highly impacted during the COVID pandemic is yet to come back on its foot, and that's one of the sectors where the employment is yet to recover. The local staff has returned. The staff that went back home is yet to return. As the restrictions ease off, there's hope that they'll also come back.
See, we are witnessing a surge in demand, especially on backdrop of festival season. In some sectors, the demand has reached to 100% of the pre-COVID level. Somewhere it is at 90% in comparison of pre-COVID level. But the industry is now facing a shortage of labor because of the increased demand. If you go with the industry data, the most affected sector is manufacturing, especially the MSME manufacturing, where the labor shortage is reported almost 30% in comparison of their actual requirement. As far as the transport and the logistics sectors are concerned, the labor shortage is almost 20 to 25% in comparison of their actual requirement. The garment sector, this sector is also facing a huge crunch of labor, and there is short supply of almost 25 to 30% in comparison of their actual requirement. We have talked with the various industry bodies and their representatives. They are with their opinion that there are valid reason due to which the industry is facing the labor shortage now, and the most important is the fear factor, because the labor class has faced various difficulties during the first wave of COVID, second wave of COVID, and they were forced to return back to their native places. So now they are very cautious, and the fear factor of possible third wave is also playing in their mind. So they are very cautious, and they are preferring to wait and watch, and they are waiting as to how the possible third wave is going to turn out. But the industry is also hoping that the increased number of vaccination drive, and of course the controlled COVID cases will help in laborers, and also they will encourage them to return back to their workplaces. They are also hoping that once the festival season, especially in the northern India, gets over, the workers may return back to their workplaces again.
All right, Anurag Katriar, President, National Restaurant Association of India, with us on this subject. Rituparna Chakraborty, Executive Vice President and co-founder, Teamlease, joining us this evening. And we're also speaking with Economist Madan Sabnavis. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Anurag, we were talking about how extended timings for restaurants, for example, will also mean that you need more staff. Now, what is the situation as far as staff is concerned? I know many people lost their jobs in this particular sector during the pandemic, the first half of it. Has it been easy to rehire?
No, I think the answer to this question lies in two parts. People who stayed back in the city where they were working, it was very easy to get them back at work. What is really hurting us? There is definitely a problem in getting the skilled labor back into the sector, and there are two reasons I can see for it. One is, we all know the reverse migration that happened thanks to the pandemic, and now people have found different jobs in their native towns and very varied jobs. If I give you a couple of examples from my own company, there is a valet who was working with me for 2 decades. He's now running a bakery in Odisha. I had a guy who was working in my banqueting division. He's running a small eatery in Mira Bhayandar, which is a distant suburb out here. Now, imagine if these guys are already working. There is a bakery chef who is running a tire agency somewhere in Uttar Pradesh. So, those people who have now become self-reliant, they are having their own businesses, they don't want to come back. Now, even those people who are coming back, we have one of the issues that every employee in my sector needs to be double vaccinated to be employed. And now that is a bit of a concern because not everybody is double vaccinated. There were people who actually suffered from COVID, so they have a lag of 3 months before they can take the first vaccine. And if it is Covishield, then another 84 days. So that is also a contributing factor to the shortfall. But I guess this is perhaps the time to look back at freshers and skill them and bring them back into the system, because lots of skilled laborers have found different vocations right now.
Anurag, just a quick follow-up, and frankly, I'm cheering for your valet who has started a bakery and your other staff who started their own business. Good for them if they got Atmanirbhar in this time. But are you paying more for skilled staff? Do you now have to woo them back?
Not very significantly. Yes, in certain cases where, somebody has been a very proven performer, then yes. But by and large, no. By and large, we are still working at, what was the pre-COVID numbers and, whatever would have been the yearly increment to that these are the numbers at which we are working. It's not like there is suddenly a huge premium on the price. It's about, if people were vaccinated, everybody was double vaccinated, I would not even be talking too much about it because that will open up a huge number of people who are ready to be employed.
Okay. Rituparna, is this a trend that we are seeing, and which sectors are getting hit? So as our reporters said in the beginning of this discussion and all the information they've put together, they've spoken to various sectors and there are different trends emerging. What is the overall picture? Because if you look at the employment figures, it's not as if there is a lack of people who need to be employed in this country. A labor shortage is something you don't really hear in the Indian context. So what exactly is going on right now?
Essentially, one, of course, is the sectoral impact. There are certain sectors where we are seeing the shortage between demand and supply far more grave than in other sectors. So like sectors like, of course, technology, everyone's talking about it, the KPOs, a lot of call centers. I think that's essentially where we're seeing a lot of stuff, even BFSI, where we are seeing. So that's one element and one kind. And the reasons associated with that, honestly, are very unique. Then, of course, the second situation where for the last, let's say, 2 appraisal cycles, a lot of individuals did not get any there hasn't been any movements, promotions, increments, and it's just things have just started opening up, because of which there is a lot of people who are leaving their current jobs and moving and switching. And the third problem, which I think so far you all have been discussing, has been that there are a lot of these jobs which are highly dependent on migrant workers. And while they were quite significantly and worst affected during the pandemic, during the 2 waves, there were no jobs. A lot of these people had to go back. Now, when they have started opening back, they're struggling to get some of these resources back. So I think there are 3 things which are currently going on. Tamanna. The first one, which I alluded to about the high-end skills jobs, what's going on, essentially that's because the demand and the nature of skill sets, many skill sets which we thought we would be requiring 2 years down the line, thanks to the pandemic, they have been pulled forward, and there is an immediate demand, and we don't have enough resources. And that's the reason that many organizations are extremely challenged in whether it's in BFSI. So that's one thing. The second, in terms of people suddenly looking out, was an expected phenomena. I expect that this is going to ease down in the next 6 months. On the third phenomena, on migrant workers, of course, there are many things. Things like they are not vaccinated, many of them, and hence there is, and especially in rural India, the penetration of vaccination, we all know, has not been like it has been in the cities. So it's taking longer for some of them. There is obviously a fear factor. They also want to be very cautious about where they're staying, they're lodging, they're boarding, they want to stay close in a safe place. So they're not willing to make a quick decision until unless they're sure of what kind of jobs, who they're going to be working with. There is also the factor of the festival season, Tamanna. I mean, there is Durga Puja, there is Chhat Puja, there is Diwali. My sense is that from mid to end of November, a lot of these people will start coming back, and the current situation would start to ease down.
So, of course, the seasonal impact we have with migrant workers every year during festival season remains. Like Rituparna said, many have perhaps been scarred with what they experienced during the first wave and had to walk for miles. They'd rather be near home. And people have found new means of livelihood as well. Madan, do you see these as transient issues? I mean, and if you pick one in particular, the shortage of skilled labor, that's a perennial problem, isn't it? Especially in certain sectors.
I think we need to distinguish between the white collar and the blue collar workers. So we're talking about white collars, I really don't see any kind of a shortage. It is more linked to the business prospects, and as and when demand picks up, there will be a good enough demand. So we keep talking regularly to these outsourcing agencies, and they've said that things have really picked up in the last 15 days or so, because people are now more confident that the economy is only going to open up. There's not going to be more closed downs. But besides, the third wave today is not something which we expect, or we think that even in case it comes, I think industry is much better positioned in order to face it. But I think the problem is more in terms of the unskilled labor, or what we call the blue-collared labor, because these are the people who actually had a double whammy of the first lockdown as well as second lockdown. So as we keep talking to the SMEs, I think that is a segment which has really been affected. We've seen a large amount of reverse migration taking place last year. Some of it did tend to return, but the second wave definitely pushed them aside. And today, if you look even at the situation of the SMEs, they're not really fully functional. And those which are coming back into business, people are hesitant to come back. So I think those factors have been covered already. So even if you look at the service sector, you talk of the retail malls, you're talking of e-commerce, you're talking of cinema theaters. I think these are the sectors where presently there would be a labor shortage. But to my mind, it will be more transient in nature. And as people feel more confident about coming back to their place of work, things should improve. But definitely there will be some strain. I think what Rituparna said is also very much true. That is also is the harvest season. It's also the festival season. So those who have gone back would probably prefer to remain at home until you finish with these obligations which are there, and then they would probably return. So I think maybe from December onwards, the picture should be different.
So what is this doing to wages, Rituparna? If there is a shortage, especially skilled workers shortage in some sections, if blue collar workers are also short in some sections and various kinds of skills. So for example, like our reporter said, in real estate sector, they are short of people like plumbers, carpenters. So are employers now willing to pay more for the right skills? Are the loss of wages over the last 2 years sort of being made up?
So I think the two different answers to two different segments. So especially for the professional sectors, or let's say the knowledge-oriented, tech-oriented sectors, definitely employers are willing to shell out more money for the skills that they are looking at and which are high in demand, and they know that there is a supply crunch. So in the in BFSI, in technology, KPOs, there are certain skill sets that they much require, which India as a country right now is deficient on. And hence it's a big concern. So whoever has these skill sets, they are willing to pay the big bucks for it. So I think increments for the technology sectors, and if you refer to our employment outlook report, even for this quarter, I think we are looking at some very serious hikes for that segment. So anything which is anything between 18% to 30, 35, honestly, some people can pull off a bigger number. Now, but when it comes to the more kind of feet on street profiles, or the ones where there is a dependency on migrant workers, maybe there would be some instances if there is a dire need where they might look at a raise or something which is out of the ordinary. But I think organizations are looking at creative staffing models to tide through the current stage, so that they can come back to normalcy from December onwards around wages. So I don't think there would be a huge change in wages for that level, while there could be for the high-end specialized skill set that we're talking about. So yes, while by and large the revisions this year for this financial year has been much better than what we have seen in the last, of course, couple of years, but yes, there is a differential between professional specialized skill sets and more generic mass skill sets right now.
Yeah, surely. An interesting trend that we've been seeing the world over, and Madan, let me come back to you on this. And I'm talking about more developed nations, where people who experienced the pandemic in various ways, were working from home, saw more flexibility, are refusing to come back to business as usual. The examples that Anurag gave of some people who've moved on and found different ways to earn their livelihood, it's been an eye-opening moment for some. Do you think that some of those stories will persist in India as well, and the cost of skilled labor, the search for skilled labor, is going to get only harder?
Actually, I think we should be prepared for a more blended style of work style. I mean, your work life is going to be a blended thing, where I think companies have already seen that there are advantages of not calling everybody to office at the same point of time. So I think there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of adjustment, which is coming from the corporate side. And I think this is happening all across the world. And we've heard of a number of companies actually giving up on the office space because of the high rentals which are there, because you suddenly realize that with the help of technology and having not all people coming to office is a good way to run your business. Things are still being done where you don't require physical intervention at every point of time. So I don't think this is going to seriously alter the landscape as far as employment is concerned. It's not going to lead to a case of companies saying that, look, if you people are not willing to come to office, I will rather not have you and look out for alternatives. I don't think that kind of a model is going to persist, because it's been a kind of a win-win situation for everyone, because the company gains, because I save on other administrative costs. And as far as the individuals are concerned, you continue delivering the product, I mean, whatever you're supposed to do for your company, while sitting partly at home and coming only partly to office. So I think it's been a good evolution which has taken place. And to my mind, this is not going to cause any kind of a disruption on the employment front.
Anurag, just to close off, in your experience, are you seeing a churn in the way people are being hired? And how far are we from pre-pandemic levels of employment in the restaurant sector, in your view?
So let me tell you one thing. I think one of the good things that happened during the pandemic was that we all got a chance to look back at our own working style, and we realized in our mad pursuit for growth, we had allowed lots of girths to accumulate in our system, and that has been cleaned up and will remain so for a while. I don't know if it is politically correct to say or not, but I don't think we will be going back to the old number of employment with the current number of outlets that we have. Reason being, we have to learn to work with lesser people who are more skilled, but not so many in numbers. And this is one change I'm seeing across all the large cities in India today, as far as restaurants are concerned. So I don't see we are to go back to the 7.3 million direct jobs that we were offering unless there is an exponential growth in the sector and many more restaurants come up. I think there will be a certain amount of correction. And these are the people who have anyway found jobs in other sectors or they are doing their own businesses. So yeah, it's a very different world. To me, the pre-pandemic time and post-pandemic era are two different worlds. We can't compare the two.
Yep. Even as we limp back to normalcy, and this is expected to be a good festive season, more people dining out, more people eating out, hopefully more restaurants opening and more jobs being created, because at the bottom line, that's what really matters in an economy like India. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the discussion this evening. That was a deep dive we were taking on whether India is facing a labor shortage in some sectors and whether it will be transient.